Ms. Claudia Butts, Ms. Linda Davis,
Here.
Dr. Patricia Yeager, Mr. Tim Denson,
Here.
Dr. Mumby Anderson, Dr. Lakeisha Gant,
Here.
Ms. Nicole Hull, Mr. Mark Evans.
Here.
All right, thank you. So we do have a quorum. We are going to move forward with the board president's report. Just a couple of items to be on the lookout for, or if you have not already completed some of these things, be sure to put them on your radar. One is the dates for the retreat. Ms. Palmer sent out a questionnaire asking about ideal dates for our retreat. Also, there was a sign-up sheet that was sent out for the Board Advisory Council, and so if you have not signed up for a date for that, please be sure to do that. Those dates have already been determined, and so when you look inside of that sign-up sheet, there are 3 dates. And I think the last meeting, based on the last gathering, we were waiting on the notes. I think the official notes from the last one in June, is that correct? Yeah. So we're still waiting on those, but if you would, go ahead and sign up. Another thing I want to put on your radar is at some point, probably within this next year, I know it came up at our retreat that was in earlier this year, but we will need to revisit if this is something we want to continue with, or if we want to replace the community conversations that Dr. Hooker is interested in implementing, if we want to use that as a replacement. But for this school year, there will be both. And so if you go back, if you recall at the retreat, this conversation came up, like, do we continue with the Board Advisory Committee? And then Dr. Hooker also talked about community conversations, which would give us an opportunity to pair with he and the district to have like listening sessions. We could arrange those with other board members as well, so long as it's not a quorum. And so, again, both of those are happening this year as an effort, one, to just continue what we started so we wouldn't discontinue the Board Advisory Committee at the end of a year, honestly, without even getting the feedback from those that are on the Board Advisory Committee. And so both of those things will be happening. So be sure you also, in addition to signing up for the Board Advisory meetings, if you would reach out to Ms. Palmer and Dr. Hooker and just let them know when you want to schedule your community conversation. It can look pretty much however you want it to look, but Dr. Hooker will be present. There are a variety of different ways, depending on your constituents and the neighborhoods and the individuals you want to serve. There are a variety of different ways, diverse ways that could look. That is it for me. Dr. Anderson, can you think of anything that I may have left off? Okay. Any questions about that? Okay.
I just don't remember that conversation, so I'll follow up with you later. Thank you.
That sounds good. All right, we'll move forward to number 4. This is our superintendent's report. Dr. Hooker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to share with the board, I share with you during our Friday update about our great start to this school year. I want to thank our teachers, principals, and our support staff for a great opening this school year. Also want to share with you, we received numerous comments from our teachers as well as parents concerning our cell phone policy. They are very appreciative of that. Other dates I want to remind you of is our Cognier monitoring review on August the 29th. You received those emails from Cognier monitoring review. You received those emails from Ms. Palmer stating the dates and the times that you will be meeting with that team who will be reviewing us. We're very pleased to have the continued support of our Foundation for Excellence in Education in Athens-Clarke County. Many thanks to them for their continued partnerships, and congratulations to our recipients of the 2023 Foundation Excellent Awards, and I believe tonight we will be awarding those, recognizing those recipients tonight at our board meeting. Also, congratulations as well to our 2 scholarship recipients, and many thanks to Georgia United Credit Union for their ongoing partnership. And my last comment for tonight, we're also in full planning mode for the dedication of Betty Henderson Holston Elementary School and Johnny Lay Burks Elementary School. Those dedication ceremonies will take place on November the 3rd, so please mark your calendar and plan to join us in these celebrations. You'll receive more information in the upcoming months. Signage quotes are also being finalized, and we will begin to see progress on the front of the school soon. That concludes my comments for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hooker. Any follow-up questions or discussions about any of those things that were mentioned? Okay, we'll move forward to item 5. And these are our informational items. And we'll just go through each of these. If there's any additional information that needs to be added or any additional discussions, we can have that there. Our Athens Community Career Academy report. Early Head Start.
Yes, I had one question. I don't think I saw it in the report. What is our current wait list look like for Head Start now? Is anybody here that can speak to that?
I do not have that information for you, but I will be able to get that to you before our board meeting. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Actually, I'll put it on the, I just didn't get a chance to put my questions on the spreadsheet, but I will do that. And
Okay.
if you could just respond there, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question. For the Career Academy, we don't have a board, a CCSD Board of Education member on their board, right? We don't have any kind of a partnership or connection with them. We just meet with them once a year, is that? Okay.
If you want an update, I can ask Dr. Scott, who attended their meeting earlier this week, and she can give you a brief update of what took place there. Dr. Scott.
Good evening, everyone. So the board does meet monthly, and we had our first board meeting on this past Tuesday, and we discussed the current enrollment, which is 407 students, the highest that it's ever been. And we also discussed the success of the manufacturing, the welding pathway, and the students who have received their certification. Some of the things that they are looking at are continuing to generate funds to support the biomechanics pathway that will be starting, as well as the nursing. And so they are working on a couple of different fundraising or fund development opportunities through that. They are also continuing to look at ways to, are excited about the opening of their new culinary arts lab. And so that is scheduled to be completed and do a soft opening by the end of October, and then an actual ribbon cutting in December that, of course, you all will be invited to attend, but it is looking great. They are very excited about that and the opportunities that will be open to those students. But they are doing very well with enrollment, and I'll be sure to add in just a spreadsheet that shows the enrollment in each of the different pathways as of this week. And so I'll just put that in the board update for tomorrow for you all.
Thank you.
Mr. Denson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to answer Ms. Davis's question on the waiting lists for Early Head Start and Head Start. I'm on the policy committee, and if you go to page 12 of the document, it has the last 10 months for the waiting list for home-based and center-based, and then page 13 will give you the breakdown of the wait list for Head Start also. On the spreadsheets on page 12 and 13 of the
the
attached
report?
document.
I didn't see it in the report. Okay, great, I'll look again.
Thank you. I did want to ask a quick question about Dr. Hooker. This was related, I think, to Dr. Yeager's question about the Athens Community Career Academy report. And I don't know if this is your question or the Mr. Pruitt question, but because they do have a separate board, and a lot of times we hear about a lot of the good things happening, and then we have our meeting each year. This is one of the primary and only ways that we're able to get information. Is it possible for, you know how like board members rotate for like, I think SPLOS and a couple of other things, or Early Head Start, and just some other community committees. Is it possible to have a board member there, not as a part of their board, but simply as a representative of the board?
Sure, I don't see why that's a problem.
And I should have probably asked the board before I said that, but I know that question has come up a few other times before, sort of wanting to be sure we're connected with what's happening, because it's a school that falls under the purview, at least financially. We end up making decisions for it, and so I'll put that question out there, but not to make the decision for the board, but just at least we have that answer if that is something that the board is ever interested in. Dr. Anderson?
Sorry. I know we did try to do that a couple years ago, where we, I think Ms. Palmer shared the list of the meetings that were happening that year, and we were going to try to rotate and have members go. And I think only one meeting was attended by a member.
Okay.
And so we just kind of abandoned that
Just
effort.
sort of fizzled out.
If we are going to do something like that, I would suggest that we plan it better, and perhaps maybe at the retreat, just have a calendar ready and have members sign up at that point rather than
Yep.
doing it by email.
Does that sound okay with? Yep. And we'll have a retreat at some point soon, based on the dates that we sent out, so that certainly can be a part of the conversation. I just wanted to throw that out there because it sort of circulates each year, comes back around.
So, and so I've had the question for a while, you know, in terms of our relationship with that board, because they do have a different autonomy than our LSGTs, and we have a contract with right from the start for.
Can you speak a little bit louder, Ms.
We have
Davis?
a contract with right from the start, Head Start and Early Head Start. Do we have a contract with this board for the Career Academy? So how do we work with them is my question. So beyond just having someone sitting in their meetings, what is our legal relationship with that board?
And
And
is
that's a
that,
different discussion. Thank
yes, that can be a discussion at our next board retreat. That'll give us an opportunity to research that.
Yep.
The short answer is that it's part of our charter system contract.
With the state?
Yes, ma'am.
And so there are some things that are outlined in there specifically
That's
that
right.
differentiate us?
Yes, ma'am.
I would love to go back and look at that again.
Thank you. All right, moving forward to our SPLOS monthly report.
So SPLOS committee met on Tuesday, this past Tuesday. I was only able to attend the first half of the meeting. I had to leave. But as far as the projects that they're pretty much on board and going strong. It looks like we're going to be able to get in, for instance, one of the roofs is going to be done here in the next couple weeks over at the Early Learning Center, right? Is it? Yep, okay. And then the roof at Clark Central is being repaired. They have to do these starts and stops because of how the weather acts during this time of year. So they can't just rip off the whole roof and then, because you know, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it might start raining again. And there was some cool video that was shot of like water coming out the scupper that looked like a fire. It was crazy, the amount of water that was coming off of that roof. And and then there's been some masonry issues that they got to deal with. So it looks like it's not going to be until about maybe the end of September when everything is going to be all said and done there at Clark Central. Clark Middle is on target and on task. John seems pretty happy with with how especially the steel part. I guess we're going faster than the steel people can get us steel over there. So, but it looks really cool right now. And I think he might have some pictures and stuff later for us to see. But as far as what our projects are concerned, we seem to be going rather well and moving forward with that.
Thank you. And I know this isn't directly related to that, but just being over at Clark Middle, I did want to thank the district for working through some of the, just sort of getting the students in. I've heard from a few different parents and students that they are actually very pleased with the modulars, and just feel really, really good being in the modulars, sort of a step up from the building. And so thank you for working through those issues and getting the students.
And I would have to give kudos to district service and their teams for working through some of the hiccups that we had before school started, but they worked with the administration team to make things ready for the first day of school, so I'm very appreciative of their work.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Evans? Moving forward to the community oversight and committee report. Was that, okay, so we did the SPLOS monthly report and the community oversight committee report? Okay. All right, advisory board reports. All right, we will move forward to item 6, and this is our presentations and discussions. Dr. Hooker.
Thank you, and we are very pleased to have with us today Ms. Trinity Williams and Ms. Clark Jenkins. She's the Senior Director of the Consulting Division at Griffin & Strong, and they will do a presentation over the disparity study. I will ask them to come to the podium and to present that. Let's turn it on. We can. Dr. Moore, could you help them with the?
I got it. Okay.
Okay, you got it.
Thank you. Oh, yes, it's on. All right, thank you again for that introduction. Here's our, we're Griffin & Strong PC. Here's our presentation for the findings.
Can you
We
speak
can't.
a little bit closer and louder? We can't hear you.
All right, can you hear me now? Okay, thanks, sorry. Griffin & Strong PC, here's our presentation for the findings and recommendations for the 2023 disparity study. All right, so here's the agenda. We'll be going through the technical approach as well as the study perimeters. We'll discuss the relevant market, quantitative findings, overall findings, commendations, recommendations, and then we'll end with the Q&A. So here is our technical approach. I'll briefly discuss each one. The legal analysis, we looked at the relevant case law in the district. We also went through the policy, purchases, and practices of the district. We collect and clean data. We did a relevant market analysis, which we'll discuss in more detail later. We did a utilization and availability analysis, and comparing those two helped us find the disparity analysis. We did a private sector analysis. We also collected anecdotal evidence, which consists of focus groups, public hearings. We did an informational meeting. We also collected through email comments. We did anecdotal interviews, and I believe that's all. But and then also we did a final report with recommendations. So here are the study parameters. The study period was July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2022. The industry categories consisted of construction, A&E, professional services, other services, and goods. All right, so here's our relevant market. So the relevant market consisted of us analyzing where the district spent at least 75% of its dollars during the study period. So it was determined that the relevant market for the district is Atlanta, Athens Consolidated Statistical Area, which comprised of about 30 counties. And within those counties, if we found that the district spent about 99.6% of its spend in construction, 99.6% in A&E dollars, about 71.6% in professional services, 69.1% in other services, and 72% in goods. And then overall, in total, the district spent about 82.66% of its dollars in the relevant market in the CSA.
Good afternoon. So the importance of that relevant market that Trinity just described, it's where all of our analysis took place. So this is where the district is already doing the overwhelming majority of its business with firms located in that relevant market. So when we look at measuring availability and utilization and then our disparity analysis, it only takes place with firms who are within that relevant market, so we're always comparing apples to apples. So our first analysis is, as she said, after we collected and cleaned data, which is a substantial task, because we looked at 5 years of all of your payments to vendors in order to arrive at that relevant market analysis. So our first analysis was of availability. So who are the ready, willing, and able firms in your marketplace who can contribute to the work that you do in the 5 industry categories of construction? And that includes any horizontal or vertical construction, architecture and engineering, which includes any construction-related professional services, which is anything, tends to be licensed, but it includes consultants, medical, financial services, those kind of services. Then other services are everything else not in those other categories. So that would be marketing, printing, janitorial, lawn service, IT, fall into those categories. Then goods is anything that is tangible. So the requirements for being a ready, willing, and able firm are that you have at least demonstrated interest in doing business with government. So you had to appear on a government list somewhere, either your own lists of bidders, vendors, awardees, payees, or subcontractors, or you appeared on a state list like the GDOT list. You had to do work in the you had to be located within the relevant market, and you had to do work within one of these 5 categories. So when you look at this, and remember that your relevant market does include Atlanta, and that's where you already are engaging firms from, the total availability of minority-owned firms in that category was 29.66%, women-owned firms 6.35%, for a total of 36%. In A&E, 8.15%. Women-owned firms were 4.81%, for a total of 12.96 total MWBE availability. Total in professional services was 38.51% for minorities, 4.48% for women-owned firms, and 42.98 total. And then in other services, 29.25%, minority 1.76%, women-owned firms, a total of 31.01%. Then in goods, 13.05%, women-owned firms 2.63%, and total 15.68%. So then we looked at where you're actually spending your dollars. So with whom did your dollars go? And first we just looked at primes. Primes are who you directly engaged. So if you look at these total dollars and percentages, less than 0.25% in prime construction was spent with minority or women-owned firms. There were none in A&E as primes, about 0.25% in professional services, the same in other services, and goods was 9.17. So you actually had a larger percentage in goods. That's a little unusual, but you were doing more business with minority and women-owned firms in the goods area. Next slide, please. So then we did what's called total utilization. So we were able to, you were tracking in some ways minority and women-owned firms only as subcontractors. We were able to pull some data, particularly out of the bids that you had done and some of the certification lists, and to figure out the MWBEs who were being secured as subs. So when we did total utilization, what we did was we pulled out the subs and then put them in the proper dollar categories. For example, if you had a $1 million contract with a non-minority prime and they subbed out $100,000 to an African-American owned firm and $100,000 to a woman-owned firm in prime utilization, you would see that whole $1 million in non-minority category. But when we do prime plus sub, now you only see $800,000 in the non-minority category, and you'll see the other 100,000s put where they belong in terms of where they subbed out their dollars. So what this gives you is that at the end of the day, with all the dollars you spend in each category, how much went to minority and women-owned firms, whether as primes or as subs. So the only category that you really had any data on for doing any subcontracting really was construction. And in that category, it took the percentage of minority and women-owned firms up to 9.33%. So this is kind of just a convenient way of seeing the breakdown. In the study itself, we do a number of breakdowns. These X's are the easiest way to see it, but in the study, we actually show you the disparity index, and then in the appendix, we actually show you the exact numbers. But to give you just a summary, where the X's are is where we found statistically significant underutilization of minority and women-owned firms in prime contracting. So that's in every area except Asian American-owned firms and goods. And what that means is that we compared utilization to availability percentages. So if Asian American-owned A&E firms were 10% of the available firms, did they get 10% of the dollars? And if not, then we looked at whether it was a statistically significant disparity, which is, in essence, anything under, so if you had not a 10% availability compared to a 9% utilization, that wouldn't be statistically significant, but it was compared to 2% utilization, that would be statistically significant. So when we did the prime plus sub, every category in construction was statistically significantly underutilized.
All right, so overall, we found that the district has a factual basis for establishing both race and gender conscious program elements and race and gender neutral efforts. The regression analysis found that disparities by race, ethnicity, and gender status of the firm owners remain after controlling for capacity and other race and gender neutral factors. Also, the anecdotal and policy findings support the statistical analysis and regression analysis. So we have 2 commendations. There were limited or no complaints from the business community about prompt payment and insurance, and we found that the district did adhere to the state's statutes regarding prompt payment.
So I just want to clarify one thing. Once we did the disparity analysis, we did take some other steps. We did a regression analysis, and what that was to control for race-neutral factors that may have caused the disparity. So in other words, once you see a disparity, you have to then test it to say, is it likely that that disparity was caused by the race and gender of the owner of the owner status of the firm? And so we control for about a dozen race and gender neutral things like the size of the firm, how long they've been in business, how many employees they have, their revenue, kind of equalize or control for those factors. And if at the end of the day you still see a disparity, then the court allows us to now make that the inferences that support a factual predicate for a race and gender conscious program. We also controlled for capacity. One of the criticisms sometimes of the work we do is they say, well, you put this small construction firm in there with the big guys and you count them all as available. 2 explanations about that. One of them is not all the contracts you are doing are $20 or $30 million contracts. You do a lot of contracts that are 50,000, 20, so you don't want to eliminate some small firms from doing business on your smaller contracts. So the other thing we did is we looked at whether there was a disparity on smaller contracts. So first we looked at whether there are disparities in contracts under $1 million, and we also looked at whether there were disparities, the same analysis, on awards under $500,000, and it was fairly consistent. So we'll move on to recommendations. So based on that, we made certain recommendations. Our first recommendation is allocation of resources and staffing. It's more of a heads up to think about some of the things that we recommend and the fact that they may take additional resources and allocation of resources and staffing. So we want to make sure, you know, if you have one person who does this work and we make a number of recommendations, that may influence which ones you actually want to implement and also how you implement them, because, you know, it might not be what one person can do, and of course that goes to where your staffing currently is and what you're willing to do as you move forward. So our second recommendation is MWB aspirational and contract specific goals. So aspirational goals are really an internal measure where you're saying, this is where we want to be. This is where we should expect to be because of where the availability of these areas are. So based on our availability, that's pretty much where you want to try to set some of your aspirational goals ultimately. But we also recommend that if you have a 38% availability in construction or one of the categories and you've only had a 1% utilization, to try to say get to the 30 or 35 or whatever it is in 1 year isn't going to happen. That's a recipe for failure. So we'll help you to calculate what's a reasonable place to get to in a year, and then you kind of split the difference moving forward until you can ramp up to full availability. And the aspirational goals are using all the tools in your tool belt, including some of the tools we're going to recommend, is where are you at the end of the year? Whether it's subcontractors, whether it's primes, whatever, however you get there, what's your utilization of MWBs at the end of every year? And that's what an aspirational goal sets, as to whether you've been successful. Contract-specific goals are, what you saw in our availability is kind of the catch-all for construction, or for whichever category, but you know, construction tends to be the biggest area of subcontracting. You would not want to apply that to every contract, you know, because you could have a 20, 25% availability in construction, And then you have a contract where it's blasting and demolition, where your availability really is closer to 5%. Or it could be that you've got hauling and your availability is closer to 30%. So you want to make sure that you're adjusting your goals on a contract by contract basis. And again, we can help you in terms of how do you do that. It's very similar to the federal DBE program, which has some guidelines on how you do goal setting. They've been doing it for 35, 40 years, more than that. So our third recommendation is actually a race and gender neutral recommendation, which is a small business reserve program. What that is that we heard over and over again firms who said that there's unfair competition with large firms on smaller contracts. And so one of the ways to remedy that, which actually helps to improve MWBE participation as well, is to have a threshold under which only small businesses can bid. This is a very popular recommendation because it is race neutral and because it benefits a lot of local and small businesses in those areas where you have small contracts. So it's figuring out kind of where that threshold is and then moving forward from there. Blind bidding. We had a lot of complaints in the anecdotal of feeling that there was kind of this informal network, sometimes referred to as kind of a good old boy network, where, you know, there are people who have an inside track and so therefore they get all the contracts. One way to avoid that is to have blind bidding where it's not known. It's based on certain qualifications and whatever in terms of the firms that you're picking. And if you don't do blind bidding, it's important to make sure that firms who have already been working with you are not getting extra evaluation points because they have been working with you. All that does is continue the fact that the same firms get the same contracts over and over and over again if, in essence, you're giving them extra evaluation points because they have gotten contracts in the past. It doesn't allow new firms to come in. Unbundling contracts. You have a lot of large contracts, of course. You're building schools, that's the big contracts you're doing. But wherever possible, it's administratively easier to put out for very large contracts. But we are suggesting that where there are possibilities for unbundling those contracts to give more firms, particularly smaller firms, some opportunities, that you should consider that. Streamlining paperwork. We did hear complaints that some of the smaller awards kind of have the same contract requirements as big contracts. And so again, it's a barrier to smaller and sometimes minority and women-owned firms. And so we are suggesting that you review and streamline the bidding process so that the required submissions are not overly burdensome, particularly on small firms on small projects. That you accept certifications. Again, we're not suggesting that you would certify firms, but we think that you should accept all the certifications in the area that are bona fide. Targeted outreach. That's knowing, and I'm going to talk about the last two, those two, targeted outreach and forecasting. Again, this concept that the same firms get the same contracts over and over again and that somehow they have an insider track on even knowing when things are coming out. That if you're doing forecasting at the time when your budget's approved and you're telling firms ahead of time, here's what we expect to come out over the next year, it allows for joint venturing, it allows for teaming, and it allows for targeted outreach, which is knowing that there are firms out there who can do this kind of work and telling them, you know, you might get ready to want to come after this particular project. Local supportive services, we also recommend. What that means is that there are a number, you're right here with a good college and some technical schools who can help to provide some developmental services for businesses in your area who can't seem to get in to do work for you. And some of that is maybe they're lacking some technical support. And so one thing that you can do to bring in firms who are local, and again, sometimes smaller, is local supportive services. We also, next slide, please. We also, one of the collateral benefits of what we did was we looked at 5 years of all your data. Every payment that went to a vendor we looked at. We also took all your bidder data and we entered all your bidders who have bid. We had to go through all of your paperwork to figure out who these minority and women-owned firms were who got subcontractors. We went through your master list of awards, all of that data, some of which was not in databases, but was in PDFs. We entered all that data. So one of the collateral benefits is we've now done it for the past 5 years. It's your data. We'll give it to you if you want to continue the process of maintaining that data. It's available to you. We thought a couple of things we'd like to mention to you. One is to require businesses to register with you when they bid. By creating kind of this pool of firms that you know are out there and who are part of your network. If a firm bids and you don't know, and they've just come in for a bid, they're not part of your registered vendors, then there's no outreach being done to them. They don't, not kind of your pool of vendors. So it's a good idea to do that, as well as knowing who all your bidders are. Usage of contract numbers and the full amount, it was difficult for us to figure out sometimes the full amount of your awards. Like, what did you actually award someone ultimately for this contract? That was not easy data. Tracking subcontractors, we had to enter that information because it didn't exist anywhere in terms of tracking or maintaining those subs. And the data we did have was MWBEs. We do suggest that you track all your subcontractors. Next slide, please. So I know that was for a several hundreds of page study. That's a quick overview. So I'm open for any questions.
Go ahead.
No, I do want to say thank you to you and your firm for a thorough study for our district. Also want to thank Veronica Jackson, as well as John Gilbert and Mr. Pruitt for working with you on this. Ms. Jackson has worked hand in hand with you guys, providing the data. John has given you information that you needed. This is a good jump start for us as to what we need to do to make sure we have processes in place to address this, the issues that you have pointed out to us. So we're looking forward to coming up with solutions as a team as to how we can address all of the disparities that you shared with us tonight. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. I just want to thank you for the clarity with which this report was prepared. I really felt good as I read it. I was like, wow, I don't need a dictionary beside me. So thank you for the language that was very understandable. It didn't stress me out to even try and figure out what you were saying. It is my first time reading a disparity report from page 1 to the end, and I learned a lot. So I appreciate the thoroughness in which it was done and the way that it was presented to us. You're welcome.
Mr. Denson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yeah, I definitely greatly appreciate this information, and it's so pivotal because, in my understanding is that we have to have this kind of study there to prove this disparity before we can actually take any of these non-neutral actions, which this study obviously shows is we are in great need of. I was definitely shocked to see, like 0.08% of our total contract spending, going to Black or African American workers, whenever we see the percentage of the regional market being, much, much higher. So it definitely shows a lot of work and investment that I think we have to put in. The one thing that I do wonder if we could explore, and throwing this to Dr. Hooker, is just knowing that ACC Gov just did this also, and actually had their presentation just last night with similar findings, that when we're talking about at least some of these, goals that we'll kind of take on, such as, resources and actually maybe creating positions, I wonder if there's, and definitely doing outreach, there's ways that we can actually work with them and partner with them so that we can be sharing the costs and obviously making our stretch go even further, so that we're not only doing this for the school district and they're not only doing it for the county, but we're doing this for the entire community, which I think that we greatly need to do. And then the last thing that I think, one last comment that came up at the end there that definitely struck me was when saying we need to find out how much did you actually award. That was not always easy to find. That greatly concerns me as the part of the body that is supposed to be doing fiscal oversight over the school district, that if it is difficult for this organization that spent months working on this, it was difficult for them to find how much was actually awarded in contracts. I feel like there needs to be some better transparency and documentation around that too. That probably goes outside of this disparity study.
Additional, Dr. Yeager?
Thank you so much. We've been waiting for this for a long time, so thank you. I know it took a lot of work. I have a quick question about the regional. So of course Atlanta is the dinosaur in the room, or the elephant in the room. What happens if you break out Atlanta versus all those other counties? Are we really drawing from Atlanta? Or is it, I just wonder how much, there were like 30 counties listed in your region. Georgia
Yes.
has a lot of counties, but how much is Atlanta versus all the other places?
So I don't have that at my fingertips, but it is in the report.
Okay.
There's an appendix in report that says relevant market by county.
Okay.
And so you'll see Fulton County, you won't see City of Atlanta, but it breaks down every dollar you're spending in every county, in each of the 5 categories. So it has construction by county.
That's in the appendix?
It's
Okay.
in the appendix, it's like Appendix A. It's one of the first things, and you'll see a whole list of counties and the dollars and the percentage of your dollars that were spent with firms located in that county. I will say this, I think and this in some ways may differentiate you from the county itself, and this may go to the fact that, you're building schools. You had kind of a unique issue, which is that the overwhelming majority of your construction dollars were spent with only 2 firms. And the overwhelming majority of your A&E dollars were spent with 1 firm. And so if that continues to be the case on the prime side, then one of the things to look at is to encourage them to increase their subcontracting, because you're not going to see those prime numbers change. And again, I don't know why that is, but you're not going to see your prime numbers change if there's really only 3 firms getting huge amount of those awards. But where you can see a definite change could be in those firms, and because they're getting so much work from you, is talking to them and encouraging them to really look at utilizing more minority and women-owned firms.
Just to finish up, the appendix is in the email that you sent us this morning, or that
It's in the
document?
full report. It's in the
Okay.
full report.
And did we get the full report?
Yes. You
I
did
thought
get
we did, and I
full
thought I
report. It
clicked
was
on it.
part of a Board Friday update. Ms. Palmer, we'll resend it tomorrow, but
Okay.
it was part of a
Thank you.
Friday's update.
Yeah, I missed that. Thank you.
But Dr. Yeager, there is the folder that was shared was very helpful, because there is a portion in that Ms. Palmer sent back out where you can actually go and look at all of the people we've contracted with over the past 5 years, like the actual organizations or businesses in each of those 5 categories. And that is in the link that Ms. Palmer sent out.
Yeah, I did click on that one. Yeah, we did, there's 2, you'll see 2 analysis. One is every payment, consolidated, so it's 5 years, so you can see top to bottom in each category, like who's the firm in construction you spent the most amount of money with over the study period, and it consolidates that dollar. It also, there's a separate analysis, so one's of payments and the other one is award amounts. So again, that award amount is the full amount of the award that was ultimately, and I believe we had change orders, so it's ultimately what was awarded under that contract. And all that data is in a SharePoint that we tried to share, but we had to do it a different way, so I think you do have it all now.
Ms.
So by way
Davis?
of, were you not?
Yes,
implementing?
Ms.
Thank
Davis.
you. By way of explanation, I recall a time when the board took action to go to a 3 or 5 year plan with a contractor for especially our school construction. It was something that was happening at the University of Georgia, and I think it was also maybe happening with the county. And that would explain why we have so few in a 5 year span. But I do believe that we were to renew that every 5 years. So that was by design when we look at one company for so many projects for so long. So yeah, I do remember, I actually was on the board at that time, so I remember that. And this was the unintended consequence of that, so thank you.
With the, what would you recommend are our next, like, we see the recommendations and in reading through the report, generally, where do governing bodies go after this? Because I'm just thinking, like, I know you all reached out to a lot of businesses. We would actually see a lot of your advertising for people and businesses. But then the reality is, you know, as Mr. Denson said, this is an issue in Athens. And so just trying to figure out, where do we go from a community standpoint? Like, how would you recommend that, like, what does the district do next? Obviously, the report is out there, but there may be businesses and people that still aren't fully, you know, aware or engaged as far as what this means, which means that they then don't really have a way to, you know, both support us, but then also hold us accountable.
Yeah. So besides accepting the study and its recommendations and deciding how you're going to move forward, there's the next thing you would kind of do is decide which one of the recommendations makes sense for you to implement. And by the way, it doesn't mean a full implementation. Like, we'll talk about goal setting, and maybe you only start goal setting if you have a small staff, with very large contracts, and then kind of see how you can handle those, and then, you know, you add to that depending on how. So you can always roll out your implementation. You don't have to do everything all at one time. Then you do a gap analysis, figure out what needs new authorization by you in terms of moving forward and which ones don't, and then decide how you're going to authorize that. And then you're going to want to draft some sort of a program plan. Like, what's this going to look like? What is our overall program? How much of this are we going to do that's SBE or small business oriented? How much of this is MBE oriented? And then ultimately figure out what the phases are. You know, how much money do we need? What are the tasks that need to be done? And then training protocol and training staff. So it's hard to do anything to the community other than to tell them the findings until you decide how you're going to move forward. And once you move forward and you make those decisions, it's really a good idea to hold some, you know, some public information sessions about this. I will tell you, we did something a little bit unique, which I hadn't really done before in Toledo, Ohio last year, where when we did the study, as we did implementation with them. So kind of in between finishing the study and the implementation, we actually had probably 6 or 7 community meetings, some of them with not-for-profits, to say, here's kind of what we found, here are the recommendations, and you started hearing not-for-profits saying, we can help with that, we can help with this is what we do, where it took some of the financial and fiscal burden off of the city to always have to do something, and it really encouraged partnerships with local organizations. Also kind of got a lot of buy-in from the community. They have a different situation. They have unions, heavy unions in the Midwest. So we met with unions, we met with businesses, we met for not-for-profits. And then the other is, which I think was mentioned, which is trying to join together with other local agencies to do some things together. Outreach is definitely one you can do together, kind of talking to the community, because if firms have felt left out, which we were kind of getting in our anecdotal, and I will tell you, we had a difficult time getting anecdotal. And a lot of that was because firms were kind of like, why? You know, and a lot didn't even know, when we talked about Clark County School District, they were like, who? So they're not aware of the opportunities, they're not aware that you're open for business with them, they're not aware of the fact that there are some opportunities, which there are for small businesses even, on some of the smaller contracts you have, particularly as subcontractors. So some of this is quite frankly a marketing campaign, letting firms know you're open to do business, you want to do business with more diverse firms, you know, you want to do business with not the same firms over and over again all the time. You know, even if it's on the prime level, there are lots of subcontracting opportunities for firms out there, particularly as far out as your relevant market goes. And remember, we didn't make up that relevant market. That's how far out you're spending your dollars already with firms. So we're not taking you any further out than the economic marketplace you already have. So there are firms who you could be reaching out to and saying, listen, you know, consider doing business with us. So it's a little bit of a marketing campaign, and I think that's kind of maybe ultimately your next step once you decide how you want to move forward.
That was actually, in reading your report, that was the thing. I'm a small business owner in Clark County, and that was one of the biggest things that stood out to me, was like how to do business with CCSD. I think that's, not only do we need to get out and market and maybe try to find those businesses that we can work with, but also having community events where it's complicated, you know, how to, you know, you have to submit a bid, you have to follow X, Y, and Z, and knowing that how you can fit into that piece. And I think it is something that is a good step for us to take, would be what you just said, like finding some sort of platform to let the public know that there are opportunities and this is how you can potentially be a part of it. Because right now, it's a bubble. You know, we maybe put it online, or we have these bids, and I know you can't do that for everything, but just having some community events where people do understand that there is a process, that there are available possibilities. So yeah, that really stood out to me.
And I think particularly when you, and because you are kind of known for these big projects, okay, we do these big building school projects. So if you're known for that, it's kind of saying, but remember there are lots of other opportunities, and you really can break that down. You know, Mercedes-Benz Stadium was $1.6 billion. We were the supplier diversity managers on that project. When you took out the custom steel, there were still about $950 million. And we were able to get a 36% participation of minority and women-owned firms. And that wasn't because people came to us. It's because they broke down those packages, figured out where there are opportunities. We just met with a firm yesterday in one of our other studies, a large firm in North Carolina, and they showed us a wheel where they have a wheel where they go, okay, well, we can hire one person to do all of the cement work, or we can break it down into these 4 packages and have more firms do that work. And sometimes they apply the inner circle of, yeah, we got metals and we've got this and we've got that to do. And sometimes they look at that outer wheel and say, well, we can break some of this down. I'll use City of Toledo again. They had a mowing program. So they hired one firm to do all the mowing, and that was one contract. Well, then they decided, well, it is administratively a little harder, but let's do a mowing program. And so they got, instead of giving one big mowing contract, they gave 10. They broke it down in, I guess, sectors of the city and gave away 10, awarded 10 mowing contracts. You know, again, you do these big projects, but there are lots of subcontracting opportunities if you unbundle that.
Could you talk a little bit about what you found in terms of administration within the district in organizing and processing bids, and are there areas that you could point to where those improvements could be made? For example, is there a use of a software to track all of the bidding, all of the registrants? Are there spaces where you found that could be improved?
Yeah, so it's not easy. I mean, we made these recommendations about tracking things, and so you need some software to do that. There is existing software. There are some popular ones. There are 2 or 3 popular companies who do this tracking software that takes the people power out of it. For example, there's a couple of software companies who do their contract compliance software. So it allows the prime to go in and say, here are all the subcontractors I have and how much money they're supposed to get. And then every time they submit their pay apps, they put in how much they paid the sub, and the sub has the ability to go in and confirm that they got those payments. And those same kind of software programs, contract compliance software programs are available. You know, I know 3 that are pretty popular around, and they all have their pros and cons. Some are better at one thing than the other. Some are cheaper than others. So, but again, we're happy to work with Ms. Jackson and explain to her some of those possibilities.
And so, have you seen this in other spaces that have these issues where perhaps you could implement point systems in the bidding process for MWBEs, or first-time vendors or whatever?
So the courts have been really, I'm surprised none of you asked me about that, but the courts have been adverse for decades about having preference programs on the prime level. So no, we wouldn't suggest prime preference points that are race and gender based. If you notice, the recommendation we made for the small business reserve was a race and gender neutral program. So they're fine with that if you provided points because of size, location, race neutral things, you can do that on a prime level, but I wouldn't do anything that's race and gender conscious on a prime level. I would leave that for the behaviors of prime contractors to do goal setting.
When you say behaviors of prime contractors, I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this. So you mentioned earlier in your presentation that you can encourage prime contractors to subprime to minority and women-owned businesses. And so I'm circling back to that now because you said it again. And what does encouraging and what does that look like?
Okay. So it can look like a number of things. So the traditional MWB subcontractor goal program has been what's called a good faith efforts program. So it means you set a goal, a reasonable goal based on that contract. So what's a reasonable goal based on, you break down the scopes of work in that contract, kind of see who's out there going to do that. There's a computation you can do. There's a whole little computation you can do that gets you to the goal for that project. You put that goal in there and you tell them that they have to meet that goal or they have to demonstrate good faith efforts. Good faith efforts means we tried, we reached out to firms, and we couldn't get anybody to. We couldn't meet the goal even with our good faith efforts. And there are a number of checkpoints for good faith efforts. The state of North Carolina actually has a 50-point check system that is their good faith efforts. Not a big fan because usually firms find a way to get 50 points without doing much, but you can. So there are lots of different definitions of what good faith efforts mean, but it means I tried in good faith and I couldn't. You have to offer that. You can't just have a quota and say it's 10%, you know, no matter what. You have to give them the opportunity, because sometimes there are legitimate reasons, like everybody's busy. That happens, you know, when there's a big boom of construction. Or there aren't, I couldn't find any firms in certain categories. But if you do good goal setting, it means we've already seen there's availability out there. So encourage, so that's been the traditional MWBE program. And you either meet those goals, demonstrate good faith efforts, or your bid is considered non-responsive. Some people do a bifurcated bidding situation where they don't even open the dollars until you've satisfied the responsiveness. If you're deemed not responsive, they don't even open your dollar bid. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is the encouragement route, where you say, listen, we have a goal. Our aspirational goal is 20%. Tell us what you can do to meet this on these particular projects. And then they come back with 18. And you go, okay, you came back with 18, now you make that a contract in any of these events. When a prime comes back and says, this is how much I'm bidding and including in my bid a commitment to 20% or 18% or whatever the percentage is, that now becomes a contract commitment that they're contractually obligated to meet, whether even if it's an encouragement, and you say, you don't even put a firm goal, but you say, here's what we're trying to get to, and they come back and they say, okay, I didn't get to 20, but I got to 18. You go, okay, you're locked into 18. Because we have done a lot of studies where the promises are never fulfilled. Huge difference between what's promised in a bid and if nobody's looking, what it ends up being.
All right, Mr. Denson?
Thank you. Just a couple more questions. One on the last recommendation on the Institute data reform. I know it has the require businesses to register with Ccsd and have mandatory registration before bidding. Some of my conversations with small business owners and minority business owners has been that that kind of thing can add actually an extra hurdle, making it even more difficult, making it more cumbersome to be able to make bids. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so what we're saying is that they should be registered as a vendor with you, and if your vendor registration is not overly burdensome, some vendor registrations literally take 3 minutes. You know, I put my name down, my address, and I tell them my top 3 NAICS or NIGP codes. So registration should not be burdensome to register. The other reason why it's important to register in bidding, and actually why it's a good idea, we didn't recommend mandatory pre-bid meetings, but firms who want to work as primes, they got to know who to talk to even get into that game. And so if they don't know who's bidding, in your case, they may know who's bidding, but if they don't know who's bidding, how do they get in that game? How do they get known by a prime if the prime's not registered, and they don't even see that, they don't even know that prime's there, or that they intend to bid, or that they're registered with you?
Okay, thank you, and I appreciate that. And yeah, the importance of making sure that our registration process is easy to navigate, because yeah, I think that can be a big problem with it. And you know, just thinking about this with the chair's question about like, next steps and reading through the recommendations, I mean, some of the stuff I do see is what seems like definitely next steps should be. I'd hope they could be. One of them is that saying that GSBC can work with our procurement office to set the annual goals for the first year and the formula for succeeding years so we can set those aspirational goals. So that seems like that's a definite step that we should be taking hopefully soon. And then a lot of this other ones seems to me like we need to review policies around our purchasing, blind bidding. That one really jumped out to me, especially with just getting some of the feedback from companies here in town where it says GSP heard numerous concerns about the perception, even if it wasn't true, but the perception of an informal network of firms who monopolize the contracting process. And just ensuring that we're not giving, preferential treatment to companies that have simply worked with us in the past. And then also unbundling contracts, which was brought up with us doing like those like larger like 5-year contracts we're going to go with, and recommending unbundling contracts so that we're not locking in all of those contracts over 5 years into one entity. So that's something else I'd love for us to be able to explore, is just some of those purchasing policies around those. And those are things that aren't going to necessarily require us to create new positions or something like that that we could possibly be starting with pretty soon. Thank you.
Ms. Williams and Ms. Jenkins, definitely want to thank you guys for your presentation, but I also want to share with the board, we as a district office or our cabinet will form a cross-divisional team to address the concerns that was placed here. And we will give you updates on the goals that we set, the recommendations, and I'm sure by next month we will come to you with some recommendations as to how we want to move forward. I totally agree with you. We have the disparity study from the city. Some of us have read all of it. I have not. I plan to. But I do know that we will move in good faith. As you said, we cannot take this in one bite. It takes time, and we're going to take our time and do it right. And so we will form a committee to make sure. We have to have a cross-divisional concept of this. This shouldn't just lie with district services. Our financial department should be a part of this as well, to work with this team, and the other cabinet members will be a part of this. We will give you a monthly update, and we look forward for your input as we move forward to address the concerns that's been outlined here tonight.
Thank you. And I just want to clarify before you take your seat, what I heard you mention is that you all do provide services to help walk alongside districts with implementation. And it also sounds like the idea of community meetings somewhere at some point might be something useful for the district, and perhaps even for ACC, but I know that they have their own firm doing that. But I just want to be sure I heard those two things correctly.
You heard it. And some of it we'll cover under this contract. So, like doing your goals, you're setting your aspirational goals, things like that, having, at least a meeting to kind of, I call it the yellow brick road. There is a new contract if we actually do implementation with you, but we're happy to meet with you at the end of this contract to just kind of lay out the yellow brick road a little bit and send you on your way.
And Ms. Veronica Jackson will be in contact with you as we move forward to take the next steps.
Great.
All
Thank
right,
you
thank
so
you.
much. Mhm.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move forward to our policies for board review. And as you can see, this was our, the employee tobacco use. I'm sorry, that was policy GAN, policy GBN, which is professional personnel termination, policy IDAG, values and character education, and then the board policy JCDAE weapons. Dr. Yeager.
I had a comment about the weapons policy and how we are assuring that we don't overreact to some inadvertent or accidental, like we heard about a student that brought a knife to school to cut a mango or something, and they ended up in juvenile court. So I guess I'm either for this policy or for the student code of conduct, which is actually where I think the root of the problem is. I just want to make sure that what's the word in the policy is that there's discretion, how that discretion is being applied and at what level. I certainly heard reports that we always report someone to juvenile court, and that doesn't seem right. So I know we talked earlier this morning. I just wanted to make that point for the entire board that we're working on that.
Correct. We're working with Chief Reed as well as Ms. Emily Bonet to address those concerns that you shared with me this morning.
When do we see the code of conduct? Usually we do that in the summer, don't we?
Correct.
So we'll see that.
The code of conduct was passed back in May, am I correct? January.
Okay, for this coming year, the code of
Yes.
conduct is already approved in January?
Yes,
Okay,
but we
thank you.
will be sure to make those corrections or suggestions for the upcoming year, but we will apply them for this year as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
And at this point, if this is moved to the regular agenda, these will be out for public review anyway.
30 days.
So there'll be some time as well to share with the public, and, if there are some additional feedback or, concerns that parents, particularly teachers and adults in buildings have, would encourage them to, reach out to the district or board members to share those as well.
So can I just ask a question about the penalties being a part of the policy? Is
Can you
that-
speak a little bit closer and louder?
I wasn't sure about the penalties being a part of the policy. Is that more the reg part of this, or? And so is this taken partially from the code? I know it's in the code of conduct, right?
Ms. Davis, some of that, and I'll defer to Ms. Vaness, but I think those penalties are part of the things that have to be in the policy itself under the state statute.
Oh, so we don't get the attorney's letters anymore, right?
Correct. Ms. Vanessa and she gets my input and we craft it before it gets to you now.
Thank you.
That is correct. The part about the firearms and dangerous weapons is language that is required by the law.
Next. Yeah.
All right, so, and we can continue looking at that over the next couple of weeks, so. Whoopsies. All right, we are going to move forward now to item 8. And these are our business items for discussion. And just a note that we are building the consent agenda. And so as we discuss these items, we obviously, if you have any questions or anything like that, but they have been out there. So this has been something that we've had for a couple of weeks. So hopefully, if there have been some questions, you felt comfortable asking those in our document and you've received the answers. But certainly, if there are any additional questions and follow-up discussion, feel free to add that. After that, we're going to decide if this item will be moved to our consent for our next official and business meeting, or if we want to take action on the item individually, or if we want to table the item until the next board meeting. Okay, so we'll start with the work session minutes. That's item A from July 13th, and the board meeting minutes. Okay, we're going to keep that on consent unless I hear any. All right. Personnel.
I don't think I saw it.
Okay, we'll keep that on consent. The computer purchase for Cedar Shoals CTAE course. All right, we'll keep that. And the turf field at Chase Street Elementary.
I had a quick question about that. Can I ask? So I know when we put new turf on Clark Central, we paid attention to the heat that is absorbed and re-radiated and making sure it wasn't a little oven. Did we do that for this playground, or are we just getting kind of standard turf?
Dr. Askew.
So the turf that's being installed for Chase Street is a standard turf that's used on play field, so it's rated for all those things, UV, heat radiation, et cetera.
Okay, so it's as good as what I know we bought for the football players.
But it's a different type of turf. So the turf that's on the field at Clark Central is for like football games. It's a higher grade, but it still meets play standards, if that makes sense. So like that's $1 million field at Clark Central.
Right.
This is like a
70,000, yeah.
Right. So it's a little bit different, but still rated for the use.
So the rating for the heat is similar. It's not
Correct.
going to cook our kids.
Right, exactly.
Okay, thank you for that.
I read that we also did Gaines Playground. Is this the same turf that's at Gaines?
Correct, and same contractor.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, so we'll keep that on consent. I think that's what I'm sensing. All right, the modular building rental agreement for the Cedar Shoals renovation project. Okay.
I just have one quick question
Sure.
on that one. Estimated return charges, what does that mean?
Mr. Gilbert, would you come forth and answer that, please?
The question again, return charges? When they have to break down the trailer and reassemble it and then haul it away.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Denson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my just question is, you know, we had a similar contract, a larger one come before us a few months ago for Clark Middle. And, you know, these are pretty large contracts, pretty large amounts. I mean, have we explored just trying to figure out, I just hope that we're exploring any potential reuse of buildings where we don't have, since so much of this is like delivery, I mean, $131,000 a sub in delivery charges. I remember reading on the contract the transportation of driving them down here. If there's ways that we can just ensure that we're reusing them rather than having to ship these things back and forth and pay for them over and over again, since we're using similar buildings for different school projects.
And I'll answer that. And at this point, when I think about these rental properties, if we were going to renovate a different school, we would probably keep it and move it to be used. It wouldn't be necessary for us to own that because we're renting that to keep it at all times for other renovations. In my past history of working with other high schools that have done similar things, they rent it, move it forth, and it's used in a different district to carry out projects. You don't purchase those. And maybe, John, you can give a clearer answer than, I'm sorry, Mr. Gilbert, than I've given.
Yeah, the timing on this project, we're in between with Clark Middle, and so we need this one now. If we were going to start at the summer, we could potentially reuse one of the units that was at Clark Middle, but it just timing-wise didn't work out. But we would look, you know, in the future, if we did have the opportunity to move one to another, we would obviously entertain that with mobile modular, you know, to try to minimize those costs.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any additional questions or discussion? Want to keep this on consent or vote on it separately? Okay. Okay. All right, so we'll keep the modular building. Moving forward to item F, this is the CM at risk contract for Cedar Shoals High School renovation project. Good to go? Okay. All right. So that's on consent as well. We'll move forward to our therapy travelers contract. This is item G.
It's in all of these that are presented before you. We've already signed those contracts. We sent a separate email maybe a week or two ago giving you the importance of us signing it early. So can we place this on consent?
All right, and that was, just to be sure, Dr. Hooker, that was G, the therapy travelers contract, Solient, and Maxim staffing. Was Ideal in that email?
Ideal
Okay.
was part of that as well.
Okay.
And Gold
All
Book,
four. Okay.
Ms. Palmer, am I correct? Gold Book was not a part of that.
Just the three, G, H, and I were part of the emergency
That's what
ratification,
I thought.
and Ideal and Gold Book were not.
Okay.
Thank you for that correction. I apologize.
Okay, so we'll place G, H, and I on the consent, but any follow-up questions before we move those to consent for our business meeting? Okay. All right, the Ideal staffing contract, and that is item J. Okay, consent, I see consents, and then I saw a face that looked like it had a question. No, okay. All right, so we're gonna move Ideal staffing contract to consent. Item K, this is our Gold Book contract. All right, I'm just being sure. Ms. Butts, do you have any follow-up or just checking in? Okay. All right, and then lastly, our field trips. All right, so all of those items A through L are on our consent agenda. We are at item 9, and this is executive session. The floor is open for a motion. Oh, sorry about that. To go into executive session for the following reasons. To discuss or vote to authorize the settlement of any matter which may be properly discussed in executive session in accordance with paragraph 1, section 50-14(2), 2, to authorize negotiations to purchase, dispose of, or lease property, to authorize ordering and appraisal related to the acquisition or disposal or of real estate, to enter into a contract to purchase, dispose of, or lease property subject to approval in a subsequent public vote, or 5, to enter into an option to purchase, dispose of, or lease real estate subject to approval in a subsequent public vote, and then also to discuss or deliberate upon the appointment, employment, compensation, hiring, disciplinary action or dismissal, or periodic evaluation or rating of a public officer or employee, or to interview applicants for the position of superintendent. The floor is open for a motion to enter into executive session for those stated reasons.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Dr. Yeager, a second by Mr. Denson. Any follow-up discussion? Okay, all in favor of entering executive session for those stated reasons, if you would raise your hands and say aye. Aye. Okay, so that motion carries. We are entering into executive session at 6:33 p.m.
Ken, how are you? Yeah, just say, you know, as I call your name, if you'll make your way to the stage, you don't have to wait for them to get up, because we're gonna take a group picture, and then just read them. Yeah.
Awesome, will do.
Thank you.
Hey, lady. Hello, how are you? I'm so glad to see you. I'm glad that you're here.
Good evening. So we are exiting out of executive session at 7:27 p.m. We're going to go ahead and call our business meeting to order at 7:27 p.m. Dr. Hooker, if you would conduct roll call.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Heidi Hensley,
Here.
Ms. Claudia Butt,
Here.
Ms. Linda Davis, Dr. Patricia Yeager,
Here.
Mr. Tim Denson,
Here?
Dr. Mumby Anderson, Dr. Lakeisha Gant,
Here.
Ms. Nicole Hull,
Here.
Mr. Mark Evans.
Thank you. So we do have a quorum. We are going to move forward with item 3. This is our silent meditation and pledge of allegiance. If you would first join me for a moment of silent meditation. Thank you. If you are able, if you would stand with us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance Thank you. We're going to move forward to item 4. These are our awards and recognitions. Dr. Hooker?
Yes, I'll ask Dr. Cindy Moore to please recognize our recipients for tonight.
At this time, we have some guests with us, as you can see. So without a lot of introduction, I will introduce Mrs. Catherine Neese, the Executive Director of the Foundation for Excellence from Athens, Clark County, and she has several members of her board with her. Catherine, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Good evening, I'm Catherine Neese. I'm the Executive Director for the Foundation for Excellence in Public Education. And this evening, I'm here with some of our Board of Trustees. We have Stella Guerrera, Dr. Marsha Thomas, Bernie McCraney, and Tad McMillan. I would like to thank the Board of Education, Dr. Hooker and Dr. Moore for allowing us this opportunity to present to you our 2023 Teaching and Staff Award winners. The Foundation for Excellence has partnered with the Clark County School District for the past 40 years to recognize and reward outstanding teachers, staff, and students. Our first opportunity to present these awards started with just 3 $500 teacher recognitions. This year, as we celebrate our 40 years of service to the Clark County School District community, we are proud to have spread our coverage of recognition to recognize educators, staffers from multiple schools and departments. And tonight, we are going to recognize 14 CCSD educators and staffers. Before I introduce our winners, I'd like to show some appreciation to the community of over 30 volunteers in the Athens area who read every single submitted application and chose the winners that you will meet this evening. We would like to thank the CCSD Public Relations Office of Dr. Moore, Scott Thompson, and Alex Marcante, who helped us surprise these winners during a pre-planning meeting on July 27th. And thank you to our former FFE president and trustee and FFE supporter, Mary Garrison, who helped us prepare all the awards that the winners received. We also like to thank the school administrators and loved ones who are here this evening to show support to our winners. And now I have the privilege of introducing to you the winners of the Foundation for Excellence's 2023 Teaching and Staff Awards. The Downs Family District Service Award recognizes CCSD employees in plant services, custodial operations, school nutrition, transportation, and security. The FFE would like to congratulate Mr. Dwayne Lawrence of Oglethorpe Avenue Elementary and Miss Vicki Millsap of Hillsman Middle School. The Michael Peter Horvat Secondary Coaches Award recognizes a CCSD employee who coaches at least one sport in middle school or high school. The nominee or the winner should be an individual who inspires and motivates student athletes to excel and promotes the values of teamwork and sacrifice that Michael Peter Horvat modeled. The FFE would like to congratulate Ms. Marquise Foote from Coyle Middle School. The Martha Comer Chair for Teachers of Languages Award honors a master teacher of foreign languages, classical languages, or English to speakers of other languages. The Foundation for Excellence wishes to congratulate Ms. Marina Donato of Barrow Elementary. The Thomas H. Whitehead Chair for Teachers of Science Award seeks to honor outstanding teaching in any branch of science at the elementary, high school, or middle school level. Congratulations to Mr. Lee of Clark Central High School. The Ann M. Schindel Chair for Teachers of Mathematics Award honors a teacher whose excellence in teaching elementary, middle, or high school mathematics and has a positive and inspirational impact on their students. Congratulations to Mr. Brant Hacker of Cedar Shoals High School. The Cardi Kilpatrick Chair for Middle School Teachers Award recognizes and rewards outstanding teaching in the county's middle school classrooms. Congratulations to Mr. Connor Naughton of Hillsman Middle School. The Seasoned Teacher Award honors dedicated teachers who have taught 15 years or more, with at least 10 of those years in the Clark County School District. Congratulations to Ms. Jennifer Jones of Whitehead Road Elementary. The Catherine H. Hugg Instructional Leadership Award is awarded to a district employee whose professional performance demonstrates the skill to design and implement an effective instructional program, whose effective communication and collaboration skills connect a variety of people within a school community. Congratulations to Ms. Pamela Garcia of Fowler Drive. The Frida M. Thomas Teacher of Promise Awards is presented each year to 2 outstanding teachers with no more than 4 years of experience. This award is designed to recognize early career teachers at any grade level who spark enthusiasm for learning and achievement in their students. Congratulations to Mr. Nicholas Kelly of Hillsman Middle School and Mr. Montu Miller of Cedar Shoals High School. The Ken Sherman Double Century Excellence in Teaching Award recognizes a superior classroom teacher at any school. The FFE congratulates Miss Rebecca Floyd of Cedar Shoals High School. The Joan D. Humphreys Excellence in Teaching Award recognizes a superior classroom teacher at any CCSD school. Congratulations to Miss Jody Bolgla of Clark Central High School. The Howard B. Stroud Community Service Award is presented each year to a Clark County School District employee who puts the well-being of the school district and its students above the achievement of self. We wish to congratulate Mr. Alex Borges of the Office of Family and Community Engagement. So I'm super excited that all of you are here tonight. Thank you, we appreciate that. Before you leave tonight, we have your nameplates with your award on there. Unfortunately, the desk wooden frame is not here, but that's beyond my control, and I will deliver it to you personally so you can have that on your desk. You can also put them on your door of your classroom. Again, congratulations to these very deserving winners. We will recognize these winners at our annual awards reception on October 16th at the Linden House. Thank you.
At this time, let's have a few of you come on this first step. We'd like to invite the board down for a picture and the trustees up for a picture, please. So a few of you just step down on that second step, and then the rest of you around behind. There we go. Almost. Board members, make your way down in the back there and around the side. Do you need me to move this?
I don't know, she's not doing it.
It's picture day. All right. You know the rules. If you can't see the camera, it can't see you. We want to see you. So, all right. All right. Can you do that? Thank you all so much, and let's give our award recipients one more round of applause. Oh, wait, one more. Wait, back. One more. I think Scott has his lens cap on. Miss Davis, come down.
Down.
There you go. There we go. All right, one more time.
Here we go, on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you all so much. And thank you to FFE for being such a great supporter for so many years. Now, as I said, you all are free to stay, but you may also leave. Thank you for your patience. Next month, as a reminder, we will begin to recognize an employee of the month each month. And we put the site that you can go to nominate an employee of the month. Remember that anybody can do that, a member of the public, a member of the district, a member of the board. So if you see exemplary service, please take time to do that. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Selena Blankenship, who has a couple of presentations to make.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Good evening, Board. I'm happy to be here tonight to recognize 2 individuals who have been selected to receive an award because they are aspiring teachers. This award has been made possible by Georgia United Credit Union, and we're pleased to have Mr. Ken Chernowski here with us tonight to help present the awards. Both of these individuals serve in our schools currently and are working to become teachers. So at this time, I would like to ask Ms. Sparkle Harper of Barrow Elementary and Ms. Cassandra Birch of Stroud Elementary to come forward. You're gonna go right up here. It looks like Ms. Harper is not here this evening, so we will, we already recognized her at her school, but we will make sure that she gets her grant.
And board members, I hate to ask you to do this again, but when they finish, will you come on back up so everybody gets a picture? Congratulations, Cassandra, and we can't wait to see you back here as Teacher of the Year one day soon. Okay, Claudia, you can't hide. Sorry. Much better. All right, look at Scott.
3, 1, 2, 3.
Thank you all very much.
So I did fail to mention the amount of the award, and we're very grateful that Georgia United Credit Union has sponsored 2 $1,000 scholarships. And hopefully in the future, that number of scholarships will increase. So again, we thank Georgia United Credit Union for being a great partner, and we're super excited for our 2 aspiring teachers and look forward to seeing them in classrooms, leading the classroom very soon.
Dr. Hooker, Dr. Gant, board members, that completes our district recognitions. At this time, I'll turn it back over to you for any board recognitions you might have. Thank you.
Dr. Moore, thank you for recognizing our recipients, but I also want to say thank you to our Foundation of Excellence for their contribution, as well as Georgia Credit Union. Thank you for your partnership. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you again, and congratulations again to all of the recipients. Dr. Hooker, does that conclude the district's recognitions?
Yes, Madam Chair, it does.
Okay, I'll open up the floor for any board recognitions or announcements at this time. All right. Oh, Ms. Betts?
Just wanted to say, it looks like CCSD had a great first day of school, great start of school year, so congratulations to everybody. It was good.
Yeah. Yep, and thank you for letting us tag along to some of our schools. Yeah, it's a lot of walking put in at the schools that I went to, but certainly seemed like, just from that brief time, a great first week. Any additional recognitions at this time?
Yes, there's a new field house, I believe. That would be really, really a welcome spot for the board for the Clark Central Cedar Shoals game next week.
We will see if we can make that happen for you, Ms. Davis.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Okay, we'll move forward to our public comments. Let's see here. And just a reminder for our public comments, this is item 5. Our board policy regarding public participation in board meetings is BCBI. And just want to highlight a couple of things from this policy. Each individual speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. At this point, remarks must be concluded. No speaker will indulge in personal attacks, and all comments are to be addressed directly to the Board of Education. And then at the board meeting, board members will not respond to questions or comments from the public. However, the district may respond to public input as needed or appropriately, or appropriate within 10 working days. And then lastly, the use of obscene, profane, vulgar, physically threatening, or abusive remarks will not be allowed. Loud and boisterous conduct or comments by speakers or members of the audience are not allowed. So I do want to thank our public speakers for tonight. I have on my list 3 individuals. The first person is Leslie Socal.
Good evening. We are here as the Peer Leadership Program at Clark Central High School, and we are here for more information as to why our GCC partnership was severed. I will now be handing it over to our wonderful teacher, Ms. Sokalberg.
Hi, good evening. My name is Leslie Sokalberg. This is my 15th year as a teacher in Clark County School District. My 4th at Clark Central High School, where I currently teach guitar and peer leadership. I feel very, very passionately about peer leadership and restorative culture's part in peer leadership and peer mediation as well. We are here looking for clarification and guidance from district leaders as to how we can move forward as a restorative culture school without having a partnership with Georgia Conflict Center and without having a restorative coordinator at Clark Central. One of the main things, again, that we're looking for is clarification. We have sent out a number of emails and correspondences trying to figure out exactly why our contract with Georgia Conflict Center, as Tristan said, was severed. On June 26th, Dr. Huff and myself and some of the other restorative culture members reached out to the district to try to figure out how we were going to be moving forward with our partnership with GCC, as well as what the hiring process for our restorative coordinator would be. We did not receive any response until July 13th, which was 2 weeks before our pre-planning, that neither had been approved. We were not allowed to have a restorative coordinator, which would have been paid for with funds from Clark Central High School, nor were we able to continue our 5th year of contract with the GCC, Georgia Conflict Center. On the 13th, we then sent an email, Mr. Danny Malik sent an email to Dr. Scott requesting a meeting just for clarification to see if there was anything that we could do, how we could repair the relationship, what we could do in the future. We didn't receive a response, and so then again on the 18th, another email was sent out to which we received no response. Given that we did not get any response, on the 20th, we were all notified that we would no longer have that at our school. So we then sent out a number of other emails to, again, we have received no response. So again, we're just looking for clarification. What can we do in the future? Is there anything we can do? So I brought my kids here just as show of support. We believe in it, and we believe in what we're doing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jamie Mays.
Hey, y'all. First, I wanted to come tonight to deliver the news to you about how absolutely transformed Oglethorpe Avenue already feels. Truly, from the feedback that I've received from staff, parents, and my own personal experience, I can tell you that our community feels connected, joyful, and hopeful for the future. I also wanted to thank you, Dr. Hooker, for implementing the policy this year that allowed parents to walk their children to the classrooms for the first 3 days of school. I can't express to you how incredible it was to walk the hallways saying good morning to staff and parents. It was my first time as a parent at Oglethorpe that I've ever felt like our school inside the walls reflected the warmth and connection that I see and experience outside the walls. Speaking of community, I wanted to express my frustration with the district's decision to not develop a seamless transition for funding our community school organizers, as their ARPA funding will end in June 2024. The district strategic priority 2.1.1 states that the district will develop and execute a comprehensive community school framework. But how can we do this if we don't fund community school organizers? When will these highly motivated, productive district employees were highlighted and awarded earlier this year, I felt confident that the district would continue the expansion of securing operational expenses for their programming, much like the district did last year with family engagement specialists. But instead, these valuable assets were told effectively that they would not have a job at the end of June 2024. When faced with the potential of having no economic security, any logical person would leave to find economic security elsewhere. I understand that the directive was then given that when these CSOs leave their jobs, there would be no backfilling in these positions. This leaves our communities who were being served by these lifelines, again, without support and resources. I'm asking you to fund community schools. Fund them as much as you fund staffing contracts, as much as you fund updating school playgrounds, as much as you fund computer purchases, as much as you fund tactical shields. Consider the return on the investment to fund community school organizing, not just for CCSD student outcomes, but for positive generational outcomes for all Athenians. All of the leading research says that community school strategies give students in low-income communities a high-quality education. And this isn't just about improving test scores for our students. According to a report from the Brookings Institution, low levels of academic achievement compromise students' long-term educational and workforce outcomes, which diminishes their income and wealth-building opportunities far into adulthood. As we look forward to the next strategic plan, I hope you won't abandon your commitment to the community school framework. We can't keep slapping iPad apps, the curriculum du jour, or whatever the hot new buzzword remedy is, and expect solutions. We've got to pour back into the solutions that work. Family engagement inside the school buildings work, community school organizing around the school buildings work. We should be building a tapestry with collaboration and buy-in from many stakeholders, not twisting a rope that relies on 1 or 2 people pulling in order to be effective. It would be foolish to lose all the work that has been done over the last 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Tawana Maddox.
Greetings, Dr. Hooker, Dr. Gant, and board. First of all, congratulations on the great start of a school year. I've really appreciated seeing all the pictures and Facebook posts. Tonight, I am very excited, hearing words like technical assistance, bundling, subcontracting. Those were just, they really melted my heart tonight. As many of you know on the board, that was something that I championed, that we have a disparity study. We couldn't go forward without having that study. So I really appreciate the recommendations that were made this evening during the work session, and I look forward to watching as in time those necessary adjustments are made. And also in talking about purchasing, I planned to do this earlier, but I couldn't make an earlier meeting. But I would like for you to consider placing a more keen focus on small nonprofits, churches, parents, and others who would benefit from the surplus sale that happens every 2 to 3 years. That time has come around again. August the 25th is the deadline where people can purchase. But what I'm disappointed about is that those purchases are being made in bulk. So therefore, people who are low income, and years ago, prior to being on the board, I partnered with board member Linda Davis, Terry Thomas of Community and Schools, and we were able to get computers with nonprofits who serve our children every day. Also, parents were able to buy those technologies at an affordable rate. So I ask that you please consider reviving that conversation and make sure that we are not just looking at convenience, but we are looking out for our community. Last but not least, I'm not sure if it was presented earlier, but I am desperately and anxiously waiting to learn more about the details about when Apps Road will become Betty Henderson Holston Elementary, and Chase Street Elementary will become Johnny Leigh Burks Elementary. I think it's maybe November, but the public, we really want to know more details so that we are there. So I thank you all for all of your work.
Thank you to all of our public speakers this evening. That concludes our public comments. We're going to move forward to item 6. This is adoption of the agenda. The floor is open.
I move we adopt the agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Hensley, a second by Ms. Davis. Follow-up questions? Okay, all in favor of adopting the agenda before us, if you would raise your hands and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Sorry, I meant to unmute. Aye.
That motion carries. Okay, we have a consent agenda as our main item tonight, and these are items A through L. The floor is open for a motion.
I move that the consent agenda be adopted as presented, approved as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Davis, a second by Dr. Yeager. All in favor of approving the consent agenda before us, if you would raise your hands and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, so all of those items have been approved, and we are at adjournment. This is item 8. Floor is open.
I motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Butts, a second by Ms. Hensley. Seeing there are no objections, we are adjourned at 7:56 p.m. Thank you.
Bye.